Hi students, today we're learning lesson unit 11 day 2, which is all about random sampling and population statistics. Your learning target is I can make inferences when given a population. So let's talk about what random sampling is. Everyone in the population must have an equal chance of being selected in order for a sample to be random. Everyone must have an equal chance. So here's an example. A survey is taken of favorite sports in 7th grade, but only girls are surveyed. This is not a random sample because everyone has to have an equal chance of being surveyed or of being selected. So read the situation below and then determine if the various methods would produce a random sample, and then justify your thinking in the space below. Really quickly, let's talk about notes. If you want to follow along with some class notes, we have them printed off for you at Lake Mountain Middle School in the front office. You will just have to call ahead and say, hey, I would like to pick up my notes because the school is locked, but you can still get in if you call ahead and they know that you're coming, okay? All right, so let's talk about this situation. The senior class president would like to host an after graduation lock-in. That's like a party at the school. There will be games, gifts, and food. In order to decide if people will be willing to buy tickets and attend, she has decided to conduct a survey. She will select 25 students to meet and give input on the prizes, food, and ticket price. There are 500 members of the senior class. So once again, we just have to decide, is this a random sample? Yes or no? Okay, so here we go. Question 1. She selects every 10th student as they get off the bus one morning. Is this a random sample? And I'm just going to put a check if it is, and I'm going to put like this sign if it's not. Okay, and then I'll explain it instead of writing it all out. This one is not a random sample because it only includes students who ride the bus. So does everyone have an equal chance of being selected? No, because this one's only students who ride the bus. All right, question number 2. She asks her choir director to allow her to survey the choir. This one is not a random sample because it only includes students who are members of the choir. Does every student at the school have an equal chance to take the survey? No, because those ones are just choir students. Okay, question 3. She meets with the counselor who selects every 20th student on the school roster. Now let's take a look. This is every student on the school roster could be chosen. They're picking the 20th student out of everyone in the school. So yes, this one is a random sample. Question 4. She assigns each senior a number and randomly selects 25 numbers. So here it says each senior. And so this one, yes, this would be a random sample because the students they're picking from are the senior class. They're seniors, so that's great. Question 5, she makes an announcement that people interested should meet in the library after school. This one is not a random sample because it only includes students who volunteer to participate. Not everybody has the option or has the chance to be equally selected. It's only the students who volunteer to participate. Okay, question number 6. A roster of the senior class is printed and each student's name is put into a hat. The principal selects 25 names. This one is a random sample because a roster of the senior class. A roster means every single student. So that's great. Okay, so hopefully you can tell the difference between those ones. If you're struggling, you can go back and re-listen to it, right? And I talked about the reason for each problem. Let's move on to population inferences. So once a sample has been collected from a population, an inference about the entire population can be made by setting up a proportion. Those are my favorite things ever. These inferences can also be used to compare different populations and make predictions based on what we're figuring out. That's pretty cool. I love math. Okay, use the information below to answer the questions. So question 7. Eastside Middle School conducted a survey of randomly selected 6th graders to determine which elective they were most likely to participate in, and the results are shown in the table. So, all right, there's a bunch of 6th graders. They got to pick between Spanish, theater, and art, and they put in their answers right there. So how many students were surveyed? We have to add these up. What is 14 plus 20 plus 6? And the answer is 40. So 40 students were surveyed. Well, what percentage of students surveyed selected Spanish as their elective of choice? Okay, so it says under the Spanish category that 14 students out of 40 selected Spanish. Let's do 14 divided by 40. And the reason we're doing that is because a fraction you can always just divide to get a decimal. What do we get if we do 14 divided by 40? I'm typing that in my calculator and I got 0.35. Well, now we need to times that by 100 because we need to make that become a percent. If you do 0.35 times 100, you'll get 35. And that comes out as a percentage. Another way you can get a percent is you can just take your decimal and move it 2 places to the right, like we talked about in our last unit, and that will give you 35%. Okay, so that means 35% of the students who were surveyed chose Spanish as their elective of choice. So that would be your answer. For part C, the school estimates that there are actually 350 students in the 6th grade. Using this sample, how many students can be expected to sign up for art? Okay, so when we're looking at this table, it says 6 students out of 40 chose art. But there's actually 350 students that they're expecting to sign up for school. So how many are going to sign up for art? Notice right here, I just barely set up a proportion. And one way to solve this is just one out of the many we've talked about in our previous units, all the many ways that you can solve proportions. My personal favorite, let's go ahead and switch colors really quickly. And I have to do that by toggling between all these images up there, those icons. Here's one way that you can do it. You could do 350 times 6 divided by 40 will give you your answer. Or we can set it up another way. Really quickly before I solve the next way, I want you to know that here's how I have this set up. On the top of my proportion, I have set up the students who chose art. And on the bottom of my proportions, 40 and 350, I have set up the total amount of students in each scenario. Okay? So here's another way that you can solve this. You could find a decimal for this fraction and then times your answer by 350. Let's go ahead and try that. So to get a decimal, we'll have to do 6 divided by 40. See what we get. 6 divided by 40 gives me 0.15. Now the next step I told you was just to times by the total amount of students that they're predicting. They're predicting 350 students, so let's times that by 0.15. And I just barely got 52.5. Okay, what this means is that 52.5 students out of 350 are expected to sign up for art. But you can't really have half of a student, so we could round up. We could say about 53 students. About 53 students were expecting to sign up for art. Okay, next question, part D. The school estimates that there are actually 350 students in the 6th grade. Using this sample, how many students can be expected to sign up for theater? Okay, so we're going to set up this proportion the same way. Theater students, 20 out of 40 said that they would do theater, but they're expecting 350. Now let's solve this as a proportion. So I would do 20 divided by 40, and that's going to give me 0.5. The next step is we have to times that by how many students we are expecting to sign up for school total for this next year, or to come into school the 6th grade. So 0.5 times 350 gives me 175 students we are expecting to sign up for theater next year for the 6th grade. All right, part E. The school decides to drop any elective in which less than 10% of the population has signed up for. Miguel says that since only 6 people signed up for art, it should be dropped. Explain why this is or is not correct. Well, they said if the class has less than 10% of people, it should be dropped. I personally love art, so we want art to stay. Let's figure out if it should stay. We need to see if there are 10% of you guys who like art. So what we would do is 6 students out of the 40 said that they would sign up for art. What is that in a decimal? Just do 6 divided by 40. I just got 0.15. Now the next step is we have to turn that into a percentage. So take your decimal, move it 2 places over, and put a percent sign. Or you could just times 0.15 by 100, and you would get 15. So that means 15% of students would be signing up for art. So should art be dropped? No, and Miguel is not correct. So 6 students out of 40 signed up for art, which is 15% of the sample. So we can infer, based on the sample, that the population will have about 15% of students signing up for art. So we should keep it. Okay, next question for part F. Mark each of the following statements as true or false based on the data. Over half of the students at Eastside Middle School will select theater for their elective. Let's see, theater was 20 students out of 40. 20 out of 40 is exactly half. You'll notice down below, though, that they said over half. So this one is going to be false because half exactly they're expecting to be signed up for theater. All right, next question. Combined, the Spanish and art classes account for 50% of the elective results. So Spanish and art, let's go see if we combine those together. And I'm going to switch colors here. Spanish was 14, art was 6. 14 plus 6 is 20. There were 40 people surveyed. 20 out of 40, that is 50%. So Spanish and art combined, that does make up 50% of the elective results. So I'm going to put true on this one. All right, next question. Out of the 350 students at Eastside Middle School, at least 120 will sign up for Spanish. Let's go ahead and figure out how many students are signing up for Spanish. We have here that 14 students out of 40 signed up for Spanish. How many is going to sign up if we have 350? Let's write this out. 14 out of 40. What if we have 350? How many students are expected to sign up for Spanish? Let's do 14 divided by 40 to get our decimal. I just barely got 0.35. Let's see, 0.35 percent. So that means 35% are going to sign up for, what are we talking about? Spanish, okay? But out of 350 students, what we're going to have to do, what is 35% of 350? You're going to have to take 350 and times it by 0.35 or 35%. Let's see what we end up getting. I'm going to type in my calculator 350 times 0.35, and that gives me 122.5. What that means is we just found the answer to our X value is that 122.5 students are going to sign up for Spanish. So is that correct right here? Out of the 350 students at Eastside Middle School, at least 120 students will sign up for Spanish. Yes, that is true. Okay, so your homework is going to be very similar to this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, please just reach out to me or Mrs. Morris. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you guys.